My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive her with only one line. On the backboard I sit, tobacco I spit all over my sweetheart's behind.
There are places where history happened, and there are places where history reveals something deeper about who we are as human beings. Butte is one of those places. They call this city the richest hill on earth. Not an exaggeration, as reality, because beneath this hill sat immense deposits of copper, silver, gold, zinc, manganese, and molybdenum, the very materials that helped fuel the Industrial Revolution in America and across the world. Electricity demands copper. Industry demands metals. Railroads demand expansion. War demanded production. And Butte answered that demand relentlessly.
People often imagine Western mining as prospectors carrying pans and picks into the mountains searching for fortune. But Butte quickly became something entirely different. This became industrial extraction on a scale the world had rarely seen. At one point, more than 500 mines operated across Butte Hill. Beneath the city stretched nearly 10,000 miles of drifts, stopes, shafts, and underground workings. An entire industrial world hidden beneath the surface. Massive steel headframes towered over neighborhoods. Hoists lifted men and ore from thousands of feet underground. Compressors the size of buildings shook the hill continuously. Entire fortunes were spent extracting the minerals beneath the city. The dimensions of the enterprise were almost beyond imagination for the era.
And one of the things I think most people don't understand, they talk about the richest hill on earth. It's 3.5 miles long, 2 miles wide, 7 square miles, 4,500 acres. So show me any other 4,500 acres in the United States that literally changed the world 3 times. It electrified America and the world in the early days because we were producing a large part of the copper for the world. We brought us through World War I and World War II. It's copper. I think it's about 23 billion pounds of copper. Zinc, about 5 billion pounds of zinc. I think there's manganese, I could get the right number for you. Manganese is in the billions of pounds. You got lead, molybdenum, silver, and gold. So the 2 top contenders are copper and zinc. And what most people don't relate to is copper and zinc make brass. So here in the 7 square mile areas, you get this diversified mineralized area. And I don't think people understood if you went to the Black Rock, you're mining manganese. If you go to, by the high school, you're mining zinc. So different mines were producing different things, and they all contributed to the efforts of creating the economy, the industrial economy, because you could get them all in a 7 square mile area.
And standing beside all that machinery was the miner, often physically small by today's standards. A man carrying a carbide lamp, lunch pail, and uncertainty. The corporations were enormous. The machinery was enormous. The wealth was enormous. But every pound of copper still depended upon human beings descending into darkness.
At the turn of the 20th century, Butte exploded into one of the largest cities in the American West. People came from around the world: Ireland, Finland, Serbia, Italy, Cornwall, Croatia, Wales, China, and Eastern Europe. Entire neighborhoods reflected those cultures.
Absolutely. Everything that this is really the ground zero, if you will, of Montana's contribution to American history at large. It really all focuses here on Butte, because we had this insane industry that was, and whether you can look at it like terrible because it was extracting, natural resources that are non-renewable, or you could look at it like, you just imagine everything that was born of this place, and all the characters that came here, and all of the famous people that had passed through from the entertainment industry, and all of the vice and the virtue that came from here as well. It's like there are so many stories that are that really shaped Montana, and so it might not have been the first strike or the first gold strike, or but it is the most the most really important for the history of Montana and how it related to the rest of the country. To think that this place, the copper that was extracted from here basically electrified the United States is hugely important. I mean, it's like, one of the greatest inventions, you could say, in American history, to have come from here.
People remain proud of where they came from. They carried their languages, faiths, foods, music, and traditions with them into the Butte Hill.
Many arrived carrying little more than a letter, a family contact, or the promise of work underground. There's work in Butte. That was often enough. But Butte was not a place for the faint of heart. Long winters, smoke-filled skies, danger underground, and harsh conditions above it. The city itself could feel relentless.
And yet, people survived because they depended upon one another. Churches became community centers. Ethnic halls became gathering places. Boarding houses became lifelines. And that shared danger forged solidarity.
People in Butte were good people. They were good people. And most of the men worked in the mines, and miners were really exceptional people.
That is why organized labor became so deeply rooted in Butte. For miners here, unionism was not abstract politics. It was survival.
And it was so great because when I first grew up, the town, it was like a machine. You could hear it in the morning, and in a clear day and quiet, you could hear the cages tripping, dumping ore. You could hear the mine fans over in this area. There was a mine fan up by the IC for the Anselmo, and you could see that in the wintertime, all around town, when it was still day and cold air, the big plumes of exhaust coming out of all the mines. And it was like, it looked like giant smokestacks, only it was just hot air coming out of the mines. And so you had this diverse group of guys, a band of brothers, you might call them, because they all had to work together.
Workers organized through groups like the Western Federation of Miners, demanding safer conditions, fair wages, shorter hours, and dignity for the workers whose labor powered industrial America. Eventually, Butte became known internationally as the Gibraltar of Unionism, because workers here understood something powerful. If industry depended upon them, then organized labor could become strong enough to challenge industrial power itself.
The union halls became more than meeting places. They became the voice of working people living under extraordinary pressure. Miners lived together, they worked together, they buried their dead together. That solidarity spread far beyond Montana into mining camps, railroads, smelters, and labor movements across America.
As the importance of Butte copper grew, the struggle for control of the hill expanded far beyond Montana. Financial interests connected to Eastern banking and the Standard Oil Company helped shape the rise of the Amalgamated Copper Company and eventually the Anaconda Copper Mining Company. What began beneath Butte Hill became tied directly to Wall Street, industrial trusts, and the growing corporate structure of modern America.
At one point, Montana was commonly referred to as simply the company state. Everyone understood exactly what that meant. Mining, smelting, railroads, timber, electric power, politics, and newspapers. The influence of the company extended into nearly every aspect of Montana life.
There's an old story in Montana political history that illustrates that influence perfectly. People joke that Montana government operated with 5 sets of books, one for the executive branch, one for the House, one for the Senate, one for the legislative services, and one for the Anaconda Company. During debate over House Bill 1, the state spending bill, observers recalled company representatives seated in the House gallery, visibly signaling approval or opposition to amendments with little more than a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Whether symbolic or practical, the message was unmistakable. The company mattered, and in many ways, Montana depended upon it.
The relationship between Butte and the company was never simple. Many workers organized it, fought it, at times outright despised it, and yet entire communities also depended upon it.
Perhaps no quote captures that contradiction better than the words often attributed to Jim Keane. The company was a son of a bitch, but it was our son of a bitch. That sentence captures the emotional truth of Butte better than almost anything else. Resentment, dependence, pride, bitterness, identity, all existed together at the same time.
The economic power flowing from Butte and the smelters in Anaconda extended far beyond Montana. Copper had become essential to modern civilization. Electricity required copper, telephones required copper, even industry required copper. In many respects, the modern world itself ran through Butte and Anaconda.
Eventually, the Anaconda Company expanded globally. Operations stretched across the United States, into Chile, Central America, and parts of Europe, connected to mining and smelting. What began beneath Butte Hill became part of a worldwide industrial system, a city high in the Rocky Mountains, helping shape industrial economies across the continent.
And the other thing about Butte, and you talk about, Butte had more progressive inventions for mining, like the mucking machine and other things that the Hawksworth drill. They were constantly improving the technology here from 1880 on, and it was an amazing place, and it was all coordinated, and you really didn't understand what an efficient coordination it was until you saw the pieces, how they all fit together, and you still can't get your mind around how these guys worked together to produce what they did. Why all the different mines? Because in those days, that's how you increased your production.
But the wealth of Butte came with extraordinary human cost. At the World Museum of Mining today, a memorial wall bears roughly 2,400 names of miners killed in accidents on Butte Hill. 2,400 names. And every one belonged to someone who entered the mines to help build the modern world. A father, a son, a husband, a brother.
And even that number tells only part of the story, because countless miners survived the accidents, only to die later from silicosis, exhaustion, and years spent breathing dust underground. Funerals became part of life in Butte, and yet the next shift still descended underground, because the world never stopped demanding more copper. Then came June 8, 1917, the Granite Mountain Speculator mine disaster. Over 160 miners died after fire and poisonous gas spread through the underground workings. It remains one of the deadliest hard rock mining disasters in American history. And after the disaster, grief hardened into anger. The labor movement became stronger.
Then came Frank Little and growing tensions surrounding labor, war, immigration, and industrial control. By then, Butte had become more than a mining city. It had become a battleground over the future of industrial America itself.
For decades, the power of the Anaconda companies seemed permanent. Then globalization created vulnerability. The nationalization of copper mines in Chile weakened the industrial system that had shaped Montana for generations. And eventually, the collapse came. The smelters in Anaconda and Great Falls shuttered. Mining in the Berkeley pit was suspended. For Butte, for miners, for Union, and for Montana itself, it felt as though an entire era was ending.
Then came another devastating turn. In 1982, after the Atlantic Richfield Company acquired Anaconda's assets, the underground pumps beneath Butte Hill were shut off. In the short term, the decision may have reduced costs, but the long-term consequences permanently reshaped the city. Water slowly rose through the interconnected underground workings beneath Butte. And over time, the Berkeley pit filled with nearly 50 billion gallons of contaminated water.
More than $30 billion spent, and still counting, in efforts tied to cleanup, monitoring, treatment, and environmental recovery. And perhaps that reflects another truth repeatedly revealed through the history of southwestern Montana. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
Mining created wealth. Wealth created industry. Industry created labor conflict. Industrial growth created environmental consequence. Collapse created reinvention. Again and again, decisions made in pursuit of progress created consequences future generations inherited. Yet the story of Butte did not end. Like so many moments throughout this city's history, resilience emerged again. Figures like Dennis Washington helped stabilize parts of Montana's industrial economy during difficult years. And mining never truly left this hill.
Today, Montana Resources continues operating the Continental Pit. New discoveries suggest the mineral wealth beneath Butte may still exceed anything previously removed from the hill. Researchers are exploring ways to recover rare earth elements and critical minerals from the Berkeley pit itself, while developing technologies that may improve environmental cleanup efforts around the world. The story of Butte is not frozen in the past. It continues on today. And that may be the greatest lesson this hill has to teach us all.
And we invite you to experience that story here at the World Museum of Mining. Because here on the Butte Hill, history is not in the past. It is still being written.
My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive her with only one line. On the backboard I sit, tobacco I spit all over my sweetheart's behind.